I've done so many Zoom gigs. I've got so many props here. Like all sorts of shit.
I can
that
imagine.
I pull up. I got because you know the security guards in Melbourne. I've got my security hat. I've got this when I do Melbourne supporters. I've got a whole.
Titus O'Reilly.
Yeah, I start using the virtual background. That's for the Melbourne supporters. Hello, everybody.
That's awesome.
And then for Western Bulldogs, I go Franco Cozzo, which is a big. You know. When I do people in Adelaide, where's my Adelaide one? The balls. I got the balls in the ball.
That's incredible.
This is my favourite. Then I go, anyone on the Gold Coast? I love the Gold Coast. School is coming up. I've got a beautiful. Oh, there we go.
This is Legends with Bevo. Thanks to Odyssey, Renelec Electrical Services, and Anytime Fitness Glenelg. And now, here's your host, Bevo.
Well, stand-up comedian and also the host of Junkies and Something Related with Kitty Flanagan and Glenn Robbins we'll speak about a bit later on. Dave O'Neill, great to have you on Legends with Bevo.
Well, it's great to be a legend. Have I been described as a legend? I've been described as a veteran before of comedy, which is just one word away from being a hack. So I'm quite happy with that. I don't mind. Doesn't worry me.
No, you're
legend. Sure, let's go for legend.
You're an absolute legend, mate. You've been around the comedic scene for a long time, so we all know you very well here in Australia. But we'll begin with segment number one. We'll go back to where it all began for you, Dave, and this segment is called When Fame Came Knocking. Now, let's go back to your very first autograph that you signed or had a selfie with someone, where that took place and what that feeling was like when you did that.
I thought you were going to ask me who I got my first autograph from, because I can remember it was from Bob Hawke.
Oh, wow.
When I'm pretty old, and I was in high school, and me and my mate wagged school to go to a protest, no dams protest. We just wanted to wag school, let's be honest. And Bob Hawke was standing by the side of the stage. So I went up to him, I said, "Hello, Prime Minister." And he went, "I'm not the Prime Minister yet." I said, "Oh, you will be." And we got him to sign a school folder.
That's amazing. G'day, guys. G'day, guys.
Hey, guys. And then he said, "Why aren't you boys at school?" We're here to see you, Bob. Okay, so I started 30 years ago. So there were no phones. There was no internet. So definitely... I would have given autographs, but autographs the thing about autographs is I'm so old, I remember people with autograph books. So I remember when I did like a Channel 10 show, there was a guy with an autograph. It might have been, what show would that been? Maybe Rove or something, or The Panel. And he was waiting downstairs with an actual autograph book. And you go, that's fair enough, because he obviously values that. And he was showing me his autographs. You know, he had some pretty amazing ones like, you know, whoever, Bert Newton. But you know when someone just brings you a scrap of paper and goes, "Can you sign this?" You're like, "Well, what's that for? What are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that?" I do remember being in Perth with Glenn Robbins maybe 10 years ago, and we're standing outside and this guy comes up and he goes, "Oh, my God, it's you." And he was possibly drug affected. And he goes to Glenn, "Can I get your autograph?" And Glenn goes, oh yeah, okay. And he goes, "Have you got a pen?" Was like, mate, I don't have a pen. And so when I'm with Glenn, I'm like his security guard, and I always step in. I go, "Mate, we're here a long time. We'll be back tomorrow in the same place. Just come back tomorrow and we'll meet you here, hey?" He's like, "Oh, great, I'll bring a pen." And then he goes, "Who are you anyway?" The autographs are a weird thing, I would say. But yeah, I remember doing a Channel 10 show and there was a guy with an autograph book. I felt pretty excited. I would have gone home and told I wasn't living with mum and dad, but I would have told mum and dad, I just signed someone's autograph book out there. So that's pretty exciting. And the thing about signing an autograph, as the great Kevin Sheedy told me once, he has got the best signature because you can read it's actually his name.
So
and he
true.
told me, and he told all the Essendon players, sign your name so the kids can read it, which is a really good point for any aspiring young footballers out there. And put your number, because my daughter's a massive Geelong supporter, and I've got their signatures before when I've done gigs with Danger and all those guys. And some of the signatures are great, but some you go, well, I don't even know who that is. You know what I mean? So
that's a really good.
So you can read it. Yeah,
that's a really good point because I used to be a huge fan of getting autographs from my favourite footy players back in the day, and you're right. Sometimes you couldn't even read the names, and the numbers it's a great idea. So now we'll go to segment number 2, Dave. This one is called "What Were You Thinking?" Now, we all know about the pre-match routine of AFL footballers and this sort of thing, but we actually don't know about comedians that much. So is there a go-to song like an Eye of the Tiger, perhaps something to rev you up before one of your shows? Tell us about the couple of minutes or 30 seconds before you go on stage, Dave.
That's a good question, actually. Look, I'm pretty relaxed. So driving to the gig, I like to have some music on that maybe, which has a bit of a beat. Say, I'm a big fan of Midnight Oil, that kind of pumping, like AC/DC kind of music. And before you go on, I can honestly be arguing with my wife on the phone, like, no, I'm not going to get that on the way home. Anyway, I've got to go. And just put the phone down and walk on stage, because for me, it's just a switch you turn on when you go on stage. So I like to just relax and talk to the other comics and stuff before I go on. Some people don't like to be spoken to. I remember seeing a guy doing like yoga and meditation before a gig, but no, I just have a chat and then just go on. So, because I'm kind of relaxed on stage, it's good to be relaxed off stage, I suppose. Yeah.
And getting back to when you first sort of started out, Dave, obviously you've had a stellar career as a stand-up comedian. We've spoken about the 2 podcasts that you're on, and you've also been a TV and radio presenter. You've done it all, travelled around the world as a stand-up comedian. But obviously it can't have all been wins for you, and we know how tough it can be being a stand-up comedian. I mean, I've emceed a wedding before and got donuts for, when I was trying to tell a story, so I know how hard it can be. But do you remember the first big fail that you experienced, how that sort of felt? And the feeling, when basically, like I said, you've got tumbleweeds or you've said something and the audience didn't laugh, and I guess it's a bit of a failure. How did that feel, and how did you sort of get past those failures, Dave, to become the comedian you are today?
Well, when you die on stage, which thank God hasn't happened for a long time, but it's always around the corner. I remember going back to where I grew up, which was Mitcham in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, and doing the local pub. And I just died in the ass. And I remember driving back with a more experienced comic, and he's like, "Don't worry, mate. From death, something grows," he said in the car. And then my car broke down. It wasn't a great night. Look, the thing about that is you just try and do another gig as soon as possible to get back on the horse, kind of thing. So it's similar to a football player if they lose a match, that it's important for them to go and win a match, I suppose. I mean, I don't know, but one of the most horrific gigs I did is actually football related, which was the Laylaw Football Club in the outer northwest of Melbourne. As we say, it's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there. This was about, I looked it up because I was just curious about how long ago it was. And I did a joke about Lance Whitnall, the Carlton. I mean, you know who he is, but the listeners may not. He was a Carlton captain, but he was fat. So Lance Schnitzel, I think Brendan Favola calls him. And so I made a joke about Lance. One of my opening jokes was about Lance Whitnall because he was on the front of the paper coming out of the fat farm, but he was still fat. Right. Now, there was only about one woman at the Laylaw Football Club, mainly blokes, players, sponsors, whatever. And unfortunately, that one woman was Lance Whitnall's mother. And she was in charge. He came from the Laylaw Football Club. I didn't know. His photo was behind me. I didn't see it on the wall, along with Kudafides, who also came from the Laylaw Football Club. Anyway, so she was in charge of the deep fryer. So she came through the crowd. The crowd parted like a Western. And she came through the crowd with her tongs like that. I could see the oil dripping off them. And she goes, Don't come to my club and hang shit on my son. and there was no, there was no resurrecting yourself. It was just awful. And I tried to go on, but there was another comic on. I brought him on, and the president said afterwards, "Round of applause for the comedians. They weren't very good."
Oh, what an idiot!
But no. Well, he was right. It wasn't very good, and it was a horrific experience. And then in the car park, he's paying us, and he's sort of you know, when he does that reluctant thing, handing over the money, trying to hold on. So that was horrific, but that was also, you know, a lack of not knowing your audience, I suppose.
Yeah, good lesson for sure. And speaking of hecklers, I always love hearing from comedians how you deal with hecklers, Dave, because I've interviewed a couple of comedians in the Fringe earlier this year, you know, around Fringe time, and it's interesting hearing how they respond to them. What about yourself? You know, because obviously you do get your hecklers at your shows.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, you know, you do get hecklers, but not so much anymore. Occasionally, yeah, if you go and do like footy clubs, or even when you do like a corporate gig, say if you're doing a group of plumbers or whatever, yeah, some of them can start heckling. And what the thing to do is to repeat what they said, because often they'll be up the front and they'll say, "Oh, you think you're funny, do you, mate?" And no one else can hear it. So you've got it. So you repeat into the microphone, "Oh, what'd you say? You think you're funny, do you, mate?" And then by doing that, everyone knows what's going on, and then that gives you time to say something back to them. Hopefully.
I take the piss out of them. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to. I mean, I did this footy club in. God, it was in the country a long way away, and this guy called Rambo, he kept calling me a homosexual. Right now, I kept saying to him, "Well, this is a big shock to me because I'm married. I've got 3 kids. I've got to go and ring my wife now and tell her that apparently I'm a homosexual." And so stuff like that, where you just respond to them and point out the ridiculousness of what they're saying. I mean, I haven't been called, you know, a poof for like 30 years. So anyway, he went to the toilet and I said to the people, "Is he all right? Because I reckon, has he had some kind of accident?" Because, you know, you don't want to have a go at someone who's mentally unwell or disabled, right?
Yes.
And they're like, nah, go in, mate. Go Rambo, go Rambo. So Rambo comes back and I start going in really hard. And then afterwards, some guy goes, "Yeah, he did fall off a harvester and hit his head years ago. He hasn't been the same." I'm like, well.
Oh, jeez. There you go.
But I had an incident like maybe a year ago. There was a guy, when I walked on, he said, "Take off your wig, you bald C word," right? Now that was just in like a pub. And that's kind of a very harsh word to be yelled at from the stage, from the audience. And you know what? I was going like, and everyone could hear him. I didn't have to repeat it that time. And I said, "Oh, no, this is real hair." And I was pulling on it and stuff. And I did a bit of material about my hair. Anyway, he kept yelling it out. And then I could tell something held me back. I thought, there's something going on there. So I'm not going to really go him too hard. And sure enough, he wheels up to me in a wheelchair after the gig.
Oh.
And he's like, "Oh, did you like my contribution?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, good on you, mate." And then his mate said, "Yeah, he's been in a bad accident." So thank God I didn't go him too hard.
Yeah,
so,
that's good.
Yeah.
It's a really good point, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, yeah, don't go the person. That's 2 incidents of people that have had quite severe accidents, and I was about to go them heavily.
And you made the right decision. Yeah. All right. Well, next segment, Dave. This one is called "When the Going Gets Tough, the Tough Gets Winning." So what was the first big success you ever felt? Like back when you were a kid, how did that make you feel? And do you feel as though that set you on a path to being the stand-up comedian that you are today?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'm trying to think of sporting endeavors, but look at me, I'm not that sporty. Even though, as you know, our generation, we all did sport, and I did BMX. I have the trophy here, which, look at that. Oh,
brilliant.
Yeah. No, I actually bought that from a trophy shop. Don't you I did have BMX trophies when I was, because I remember going home with a girl when I lived in a shared house, and she laughed at my BMX trophies. Like, "What are these?" I'm like, "Come on." But, you know, what happened with BMX was that they broke up the amateurs and the pros in the 80s. And so I went, "Oh, I'm not a pro." And then the amateurs were seriously really fat kids. There was a kid with one leg, and there was me. So I would win trophies all the time. So I can't say that was a win because it wasn't a real win.
What about with the comedy side of things? So, you know, when you're on stage. Yeah.
I think just getting your first job. I remember getting my first job as a writer on Full Frontal, and I was submitting sketches and stuff. And then the head guy, I submitted a sketch, and I can still remember what it is. okay, it's just two headshots of two people, and it's like in a Centrelink, and the guy's going, "Oh, I'm really struggling today, man. It's really hard to get up every day, and do this, what I have to do." And the other guy's like, "Yeah, mate, I'm a little bit busy today." And the other guy goes, "All right, mate," and he stamps the form and goes, "There you go, I'll see you in 2 weeks." So the depressed guy was the guy working at Centrelink. That was the big joke. So I pulled back and it revealed that he was behind the counter, and the guy said, "I'm a bit busy," was actually the unemployed guy. And so I remember I wrote that sketch and I handed it in, and they filmed it and they showed it to the live audience. And Doug McLeod, who was the head writer, goes, "Mate, congratulations, you're a comedy writer." So that was a big moment, because
well done.
A lot of people think they can write comedy sketches, and there's a lot of funny people around. There's funny guys everywhere, but to put it down on paper and make it work in front of an audience, that's another whole trick or skill or whatever. And so once I remember that was exciting to get, and then to get your first sketch on TV, that was exciting. That was really exciting.
Well,
to
mate,
go to your parents, "I'll keep watching Full Frontal. My sketch is on at about the 40-minute mark."
Well, I must say, mate, even today, me and my mates still joke about Full Frontal. We absolutely loved it. And you spoke about before about, growing up in the area that we did. And I'm so grateful for you and everyone that was involved in the Full Frontal program, because these days we've got all this reality TV BS. But back in the day when we had the Full Frontal, we had Comedy Company, we had Hey Hey It's Saturday. We were just so blessed with the best TV shows before this PC rubbish. And honestly, even today, like I said before, me and my mates, we still joke about "Hello, Ray," the Neville and Bueller, and obviously, and Poiter,
Poiter!
"G'day, mate, how you going? Poiter."
Sweet. Yeah. Well, I used to write a lot of the Poiter sketches with Eric.
That's the best.
Eric was he lived near the airport in Melbourne, Tullamarine. And because we were both from the outer suburbs, we got on pretty well, me and Eric. And so that character was just basically a bogan, wasn't it?
So good.
And so he, Eric loves cars and footy, so he was tapped right into that world. So yeah, it was good. It was good fun, that's for sure. But what's interesting having teenagers? Kids love comedy. My daughter, who's a teenager, watches Kath and Kim over and over, and that show is still very funny. I should show her some Full Frontal because she'd probably really like it, actually.
Oh, she'd love it. Yeah, that's the best. Comedy at its best, mate. So you should be very proud, you and the team, for what you produce there. So I still love going back and watching it today. It's so good.
Yeah, some good stuff. But there's a lot of shit too, I have to say.
No, it's gold.
You know what I do love seeing is a new sketch, and it's like the kids watch a bit of Arnie Donna. And Arnie Donna are a sketch group from Ballarat originally. And they've got a Netflix show, but they've got this series on YouTube for anyone that wants. And they did a series based around high school, where they play the teachers and the students. And my kids just love it because school has not changed since I went to school. So there's a sketch called The Roll Call, where the teacher does the roll call. At the start of the, "All right, Jenkins here, blah, blah, here." And the sketch that they've got on YouTube is very funny. And it's up there with any of the Full Frontal stuff, I have to say. It's really funny.
I'll have to check that out, mate. Roll call.
They just do that classic thing where they go, "Okay, guy who's not from the class but bangs on the window to say hello." And straight away the kid bangs on the window. "Oh, mate, I'm over here." And it just reminds me of my high school. And I went to school in the 70s and the 80s. So it's good to see some new sketches. But a lot of it's on YouTube. A lot of it's not on TV anymore, or like what we know as TV.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, unfortunately, we have shows like Love Island, The Big Brother, and The Block, and it's just all garbage. So don't mind SAS Australia, that's a good one. But hey, we'll move on.
I'm going to be on SES Australia, just putting tarps over roofs. That's my joke.
That's gold. All right, David, the next segment. This one is called "Now I'm in the Big Time." Now, looking back now, the first show that you headlined, what was your fondest memory, and what was it like being the main man in front of a crowd?
Oh, I found that quite stressful. I always liked hosting, and I always liked going on. Comedians still love going on in the middle bracket because that's easier. And, being number one's overrated, I reckon. As the guy from Oasis said, number one song on the charts is always shit. Number two and number three is always a better song. And I reckon there's something to be said for being number two. So I can remember just like headlining at the comedy club and stuff like that. And because often the acts on before you are just as good as you, they're just not as famous. So they go, "Oh, you've got to." So when I started doing Nova radio in Melbourne with Hughesy and Kate, they would put me on as a headliner because I was the most famous one on the bill, but I was often the most tired from doing breakfast radio. And so these young guys would get on before you and fucking really try, and it's really funny, and try and blow you off stage, and then you'd come on knackered. So I can't remember it being that enjoyable.
You'd rather go under the radar, as you said. Yeah.
I mean, it's different, say, doing a fringe show in Adelaide. I love doing that. So where you've got an hour of, well, I tend to do 50 minutes. Who wants an hour of comedy? Seriously. I tend to do 50 minutes, and it's good stuff. You've got it down, and you've done it, in Brisbane or Melbourne or whatever. That's good fun because you're playing to people that have come to see you. But if you're just headlining in a club, yeah, it's a different kind of thing. But I enjoy all of that, but I can't remember it being that enjoyable initially. No.
In the next segment, Davo, this is one of my favourite segments. It's called Starstruck Celebrities. Now, who is the most famous person you've ever met? Tell us the story of that meeting, because obviously you've met some great people over the years within Australia and overseas. But the first real famous person you met, or the biggest famous person you met, or someone that really sort of stood out to you as someone famous?
Because I did radio for years, I'm trying to remember who, and I did Spicks and Specs a lot too. So I definitely met people there that I was really excited to meet. And often, Peter Garrett. I love meeting Peter Garrett, for example. So I love the Oils, as I said before, from a young age. Used to go see them when I was in high school.
Awesome.
And then uni and stuff. And when I did Spicks and Specs with him, I showed him my year 11 folder, which I still had, which has his photo on the front. We used to put band photos on the front of your folders.
Oh, good.
Peter Garrett.
Was he a serious guy? Because he obviously was involved with politics for a bit as well there. Was he quite a serious bloke?
Yeah, he was a politician actually at that stage. When he went on Spicks and Specs, he was the minister or something, because he had a guy, he had like the aide bloke who hung around. And that was the only time during Spicks and Specs I was seeing someone stop the taping and say, yeah, he's only got 10 minutes left. We've got to go. So it's like, bloody status quo didn't do that. But anyway, Peter Garrett. But yeah, he was quite serious, but he could have a bit of a laugh. He was all right. I mean, yeah, I didn't get to talk to him that much. But the thing about rock stars I found, like, for example, Steve Kilbey from The Church, who I love The Church, or Martin Plaza from Mental as Anything. I love Mental as Anything. So all the bands I grew up with. They're really funny off stage, but once they're on screen, they go a bit cool. They want to be cool, those guys. They don't want to be whereas a comedian, you're like, man, I'll wear a dress. I don't care, whatever. Put a funny hat on me. I don't give a shit. But these guys, they want to be cool. And so you're sitting with them going, well, he was a lot funnier in the dressing room. Oh, well, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so they've got that on camera, that different kind of persona on camera. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah. Speaking of interesting, obviously, we had the Tokyo 2020 Olympics a few months ago. This next segment, Dave, this one's called Olympic Surprises. So what sport did you find yourself watching, say, at Tokyo 2020 or one of the other Olympics that really surprised you? Something that was unexpectedly, you actually really unexpectedly enjoyed?
That's a great question. I mean, I love watching the BMX because I just go, oh my God, I love that guy, Logan, the BMX champion.
Oh, he was a legend, wasn't he? Young fella?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of that aerial stuff they do was incredible. But me and the kids, you know what we watched? We watched dressage because
that is a real surprise.
But it really got us in because Bruce Springsteen's daughter was competing.
No way.
So
I didn't even know that.
I mean, this is why Princess Anne and her daughter competed in the Olympics, because it's to do with dressage, and horses are to do with money. So if you've got money, it's one of those sports, probably like sailing, where you need money. I mean, BMX, you just buy a mongoose, don't you, for $400? So my daughter and wife are big Bruce Springsteen fans, and we're watching, and they say, and here she is, I think it's Emma Springsteen, and we're watching, and she was really good. And I don't think she made it through, but in the end, the announcer, to give him credit, said, that was Emma Springsteen. I did want to mention that is actually Bruce Springsteen's daughter, but she's also a very good, equestrian competitor. But we were watching it, and it was bizarre, but we got right into equestrian. We loved it. And we're not horse people at all.
Oh, that's another interesting one. There you go. All right, Davo, this is our final segment. This one is called Weird But True. You're involved with two great podcasts, Junkies with Kitty Flanagan. Of course, we saw him Full Frontal back in the day and doing great things still on TV today. And another legend as well, Russell Coy himself. And the list goes on. Kel Knight, he's done it all. That's Glenn Robbins.
Oh, Glenn. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Glenny. Yeah.
So tell us about, we'll start with Kitty. Tell us about something that we may not know about Kitty. You know, obviously, you know her so well.
Yeah, I've only got to know her well in the last couple of years because she's a Sydney girl, but she's moved to Melbourne where I live. And look, I knew her from Full Frontal days, but she only did a year on Full Frontal, so I didn't know her that well. And then I would just know her from doing gigs around and stuff. And then we would do the occasional, we did Good News Week together, for example, once or twice. And we met then, and we always got on really well. But once she moved to Melbourne, we did a gig down the beach, which was like a 2 or 3 hour drive. And I do this podcast in my car where I interview comedians in the car. And she goes like, I don't want to be on that. I don't want to be on that. I said, oh, well, you just sit in the back. And the other comic, Brad Oakes, he sat in the front and we were talking. But then we stopped at a service station and we bought junk food. And I didn't realize, because she's a skinny, petite woman, she's a massive snack food fan. So I'm not talking pies and burgers. I'm talking chocolate bars, chips, twisties, biscuits.
What?
And so we just started talking about biscuits and snack food. And that's how we started doing our podcast at Junkies, because she is, I like to think I'm an expert on snack food, but man, she's bloody good on snack food. So that's the thing you don't realize about Kitty is she's a massive, like, Doritos fan. She's a massive, Snickers fan. She loves snack food. I don't know, because she's still skinny, so I'm fat, obviously. So you can see I eat snack food, but her, it's like incredible. So yeah, it was actually a really interesting connection. And something that a lot of people probably don't know is that she's a big snack food fiend.
That is one of the greatest names ever, Junkies. That's how that name came about. How good. So it's not to do with people that take too much drugs.
No. I got to give my wife credit for that. She invented that. Yeah, she's.
And Glenn, what about Glenn?
Glenn, what's a fact about him that not many people know? What's a fact? You know what's interesting about Glenn, which I found interesting? Me and him have got he's from a working class background, which you wouldn't know by looking at him, because he honestly looks like he lives on a boat. You know what I mean? He looks so well groomed, and I just assumed he was from a posh area when I met him. You know what I mean? When you meet people and you go, well, they're pretty refined. He lives in a posh area now by the beach. He's very much into the beach. But his dad, similar to me, his dad was in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force. He grew up in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. He went to the local high school, and we both went to the same teachers' college.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and the funny thing about him, I never taught. I did the course, I never taught. He did secondary teaching, and he went back to his old high school, which is called Strathmore High, which again is sort of near the airport. And there's a Facebook group of old Strathmore High students, and there's a whole section where they slag off Glenn Robbins as a teacher.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, he's a very funny guy, but boy, wasn't he a shit teacher. And they would just pile on the poor old Glenn.
That is brilliant. So as I said before, Junkies with Kitty Flanagan, and also something related with Glenn Robbins. Before I let you go, Dave, how can people book you for gigs, mate?
Just hit me up on Facebook. Send me a message on Facebook. I've got a website. I think my email's on the website. And I've been doing a lot of Zoom gigs, but they're starting to dry up. And so I am out and about. And I go all around Australia, anywhere, anytime, anything. I'll basically do anything.
Well, we look forward to having you in Adelaide, and look forward to having a couple of frothies with you in person, mate.
Bloody great. I love Adelaide. I've done a gig at the Adelaide Oval. That is a great oval, isn't it, the Adelaide Oval?
Yeah, it's an absolute ripper for sure.
I did a gig for the Crows. I did their grand final breakfast 2 years ago in Melbourne, and they were great. The Crow supporters were the best. Because, when you walk into a gig, and it's just like one of those things where they're standing around, and they're all people that were Crow supporters who got a grand final ticket, and they put on a little breakfast. I thought, this is going to be hard work, but gee, the Crow supporters were fantastic because everyone's in a good mood. They're going to the grand final, even though the Crows weren't playing, but still. they were in a good mood. And, all the legends, some of the legends were there for the Crows who I was picking on. I can never remember their names.
Like Ruin, those sort of guys.
Yeah, he was there. He was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kept saying, are you going to be the next coach? Are you going to be the next coach? And he's like, nah, mate. Because, of course, I'm a Cat supporter. So go Cats. But, of course, I don't like Dangerfield. They boo him, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, exactly.
But I like the Crows, and I like Port too.
That's my team. Good man.
Yeah, I like Port. They got that real, they got that real grit.
They do.
They're really.
Yeah.
Pal Pepper. He's my favourite, Pal Pepper. And I love it when he comes running out and they all cheer. Pal Pepper. But he was on the bench a lot, wasn't he, in the final?
Oh no, I don't understand that. Mate. Yeah, hopefully next year they can go a bit better, but. Yeah.
And he looks my age, but he's quite young. But he looks 50.
Oh, no. He's had a tough upbringing, so yeah.
Yeah, Pal Pepper. I love it.
Well, Dave O'Neill.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on Legends with Bevo, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as I said, look forward to seeing you in Adelaide and hopefully getting to meet you in person one day, mate.
Sure, I'm around. I'll be there by myself, lonely.
Keep up the great work, mate, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Bevo.